And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, If thou hast known, even thou, at least in this day, thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knowest that the time of thy visitation.
So what are we seeing in this passage? What's Jesus talking about? He's up on the mountain and he's looking down at Jerusalem, and what is he thinking about? The destruction of Jerusalem. That's right. And what's his response to that as he thinks about the destruction of Jerusalem? He's weeping. It's breaking his heart, right? He's thinking about what's coming to this beloved city, this place that was his special people. And it's going to be destroyed. He knows the sufferings that's coming. He doesn't say that he's going to intervene, but he's weeping over it. Okay, let's read Matthew 23, 37 and 38.
O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Thank you. So once again, he's making a prediction about the temple being destroyed, right? And he's saying, "Oh, Jerusalem, oh, Israel, my people, how I've wanted to gather you as a hen under my wing." Does God want this destruction to come upon them? No. He's torn up about it. Okay, and let's see John 5:40.
John 5, verse 40. And ye will not come to me, that ye might have life.
He's pleading with his people. He's saying, "Come to me. I'm offering you life. I'm offering you freedom from this destruction. But you're refusing me." And his heart is just breaking over. He's weeping. He's crying because he can't stand the thought of the pain that his people are going to go through. Great controversy. I'm just going to read you one of the quotes. This is on page 21 from Great Controversy. Black with woe was about to burst upon a guilty people, and he who alone could save them from their impending fate had been slighted, abused, rejected, and was soon to be crucified. When Christ should hang upon the cross of Calvary, Israel's day as a nation favored and blessed by God would be ended. The loss of even one soul is a calamity that infinitely outweighs the gains and treasures of a world. But as Christ looked upon Jerusalem, the doom of a whole city, a whole nation was before him. That city, that nation, which had once been the chosen of God, his unique treasure. This is why Jesus is crying. And everyone around him is confused. Why is he crying? Like, they believe that Jerusalem was the safest city in the world. There's no way that Jerusalem would ever fall. They had 3 walls around their city. No one could ever take it. Like, the temple, God wouldn't let the temple be destroyed. Like, no way, right? They didn't believe this. So they were confused as Jesus was crying over the future destruction of Jerusalem. So where was God in all of this? What happened when Jerusalem was destroyed? What are some things that we've heard about the destruction of Jerusalem? Talk to me. What do you know about the destruction of Jerusalem? Any facts? Any?
The Romans besieged it for several years.
The Romans besieged it for several years. So what would that have looked like within the city?
There were different factions fighting among themselves.
Yeah, different factions fighting among themselves. It wasn't a pretty picture. A city being besieged was not a pretty picture. There was horrific things being done during that time of being besieged. And when they finally took over the city, the people were slaughtered. Like it was horrific. It was horrible things. So where was God? Where was he when these people were being destroyed? These are the questions. Yes.
He was watching the broken and do anything
Mm-hmm. That's right. Why couldn't he do anything?
because he let us be our own self, like we can't intervene unless we ask for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like we read in John 5:40, right? Mm-hmm. That's right. They rejected him. Christ was pleading with them to receive the life that he wanted to give them, and they were rejecting him, right? And so eventually, he said, "Okay, yes, Ron."
Oh, I think that God made things for us as choice. And so when we choose, I mean, when they went into the promised land, he said, do this and this and this, and I'll bless you. You do this and this and this, and I'll curse you. I mean, it wasn't, I'll just leave you alone, I'll curse you. And you look at the land now, it doesn't take two people to carry a cluster of grapes. It is. God has withdrawn, and it's devastating.
Yeah.
Not because He wants to, because of our,
Right.
our people, our choice.
Yeah. It's not God,
Not God.
the one destroying it. It's him withdrawing himself because we're not allowing him to protect us, right?
Pushing away.
Yeah, that's right.
Brother, my wife told me this very interesting illustration she found, and maybe you all know about it already, but I didn't know about it. But the very famous pictures of Christ knocking at the door of our heart. It's kind of a dark scene, and he's knocking at our door, and she said, "There's no doorknob on the door." If you look at some of them, they're very different paintings, but the door has no doorknob on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't be opened from the outside.
Right.
Only open from the inside.
Right. Christ will never force his way in the door, right? We have to open it up from the inside and let him in. Right, that there's no doorknob on that door. Yeah. Just on the inside. Yeah, thank you. That's a great illustration. So we see that God has withdrawn his protection from this people. And it wasn't just that, they messed up one too many times, but they deliberately made a choice to refuse Christ. And we can see that in Scripture. So God's people was Israel, and specifically now Judah. And Judah specifically refused to accept Jesus. We see this when he's crucified. Let's look at John 19, 1 to 15, Matthew 27, 20, and 25. Can I have 2 volunteers to read those? Do I have any volunteers for reading? Thank you. Yeah, let's see, sorry. John 19, 1 to 15. And then, second volunteer?
I'll read it.
Okay,
Matthew,
yeah, Matthew 27, 20 to 25. So let's start with John 19, 1 to 15.
John 19, 1 to 15. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and the officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify." But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." Then the Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus, but Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him." "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered.
So we see the Jewish leaders fueling what's happening here, right? Pilate sees nothing wrong with him. He wants to let him go. But the Jewish leaders keep insisting, no, you can't let him go. No, he needs to die. According to our law, he needs to die. And then he says, "Here is your king." And what's their response? "We have no king but Caesar." They're denying God as their king. Not only are they rejecting the Messiah, they're not even claiming Yahweh as their king. We have no king but Caesar. All right, let's look at Matthew 27, 20 to 25. 27, 20 to 25. Yeah, thank you.
But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" They said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all said to him, "Let him be crucified." Then the governor said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they cried out all the more, saying, "Let him be crucified." When Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was rising, he took water, washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. And all the people answered and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, they delivered him to be crucified. The odd thing is, the pagan people realized who he was, but the Jewish leaders rejected him.
Yeah. He came to his own, but his own did not receive him. Right? So his own are rejecting him. They're making that final decision. There's no going back. They're turning their back. They don't want him. We have no king but Caesar. They say, his blood be on us and our children. I think we see that fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem. That's what they asked for. They didn't want his protection. They said, kill him. We don't want him. And so God had mercy. He continued to plead with them for 35 years. The destruction of Jerusalem wasn't immediately after. I mean, can you imagine the heart of God seeing his son destroyed? Like if that was any of us, we'd be like, all right, destruction of Jerusalem right now. He's risen. Let's get out of here. Let's go. But no, he continued to plead with his people for 35 years. The Christians continued to plead with the Jewish people. And their response was just persecution, right? So, where was God in the destruction of Jerusalem? We'll come back to that question in a second. But first of all, I want to come back to the friend. The friend that comes to you and says, where is God in my suffering? Why am I going through this if he's a good God? I want to hear from you. What would you say to that person? What's something that you cling to when you're going through suffering and you know that God is good? What do you remind yourself with?
For me personally, I would say that I'm a sinful person, and I don't know what is best. And the God of the universe wants only the best for me. So if that's what it takes, then I ask him for strength to go through it. I so often think of Peter. He was so adamant. Even if he had to die, he would be with Jesus. And within a few hours, he had denied him 3 times. So, I mean, we don't know who we really are until we're put to the test. I mean, it doesn't make who we are, it just shows who we are. And I think it's extremely important for each one of us. And God is there to help us through, but to create what we think we want to be and what he knows we want to be or should be.
Yeah. So you're saying in my personal life, those trials are testing, they're strengthening me. And perhaps for you, friends, they'll strengthen you too, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You'll either strengthen or break, but that's personal choice. That's back to choice again. So we choose whether we are strengthened or we're broken.
Okay, anyone else out there? What would you say to your friend that says, where is God in my suffering?
Sorry. So where is God in my suffering? So one thing that in my own personal experience, and I can share my personal experience with that person. Um, I've learned that God is always there, and I try to encourage myself and also pray that I may not slide into unbelief, because God is always there and He's always active. So the problem is not God not being there in our suffering. The problem is us not seeing Him there in our suffering. And so I would try to encourage someone um, just to be patient, to continuously trust, and also to look behind and see how God has helped them in the past. And that can help with, focusing on the whatever trial it is or challenge that is there, and also to focus, continue moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
When we think of this world that we're in, I think oftentimes when we ask this question, where is God in my suffering? It's assuming that He's almost the cause of the suffering, because He has the power to have prevented that suffering. And then you have this question and doubt, where is God in this suffering? But I really relate to what the brother has spoken to there too, is that God is with us. I mean, you can read Ephesians 8, 38 and 39. That's just the depth and the height, that there's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. And so He's through every bit of the trial that you are in, feels every bit of the hurt that you're in, and He's the only one that can provide deep comfort and peace in your heart of your utmost despair. In those moments of pain that you're in, if you really get down to it on your knees, there's only one moment of peace that you could ever have, and that's going to be God providing that to you. So He is deeply in your suffering. I could feel that when I lost my dad, too soon. And the only bit of comfort that could come in some of those late night prayers was because God was there. Now we could blame and have on assumptions that are not true, but we have to understand that we are like this whole book of the Great Controversy. We're at war. We're in a war. We're in a battlefield. So if we were actually out there all with our armor on and our weapons and in a battlefield, would we be like shocked that someone beside us got shot? We wouldn't be. But oftentimes we're in this world right now thinking that we're in already a life of peace and comfort, and all of a sudden when something bad happens, we're like, where's God? If we understand that we are at war, we're not going to be so shocked.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. One verse that I cling to in struggle and suffering is actually the memory verse for this lesson, Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I love that verse because He's with us in the struggle. We don't have to say, God, it's only okay if you take it away. No, He can just be with you in the struggle. He can bring that peace in the pain. And He'll hold your hand. He'll be that comfort. And I love that verse. Another verse that I love is Psalms 46, 1 and 2. Psalms 46, 1 and 2. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. And then later at the end of that chapter is also a very familiar verse. Be still and know that I am God. That can be a really hard thing to do when we're suffering. But when we do, we find that strength. We find that peace. And we realize that He is there, rather than being distracted by what's happening and feeling like Where is he? If we can just practice that stillness, then we see exactly where he is, in the pain, in the struggle. Great Controversy, page 47. There's a great quote. It says, "God has given us sufficient evidence of his love, and we are not to doubt his goodness because we cannot understand the workings of his providence." There are going to be things that we can't understand. We're not going to be able to explain it all. He asks us to trust him, to trust in the evidence of his love. There is sufficient evidence of it, right? And if we do not choose to turn our back on God, he promises to protect us and be with us. Yes, you have a comment?
When I'm studying our lesson this week, it really touched my heart because when we look at the experience of the Christians before, you know how they're so unselfish, right? And looking at our world now, practically, after the pandemic, we are, you know, how we get so isolated, we can virtually go to church, right? And a lot of members in the church, even, not only the non-Adventist or non-Christian, are really suffering from mental health, right? And being isolated, feeling not belong. So it really touched my heart now to really search myself. What am I doing, right? Because growing up in the Philippines, I believe every Saturday we go out and visit the sick or, you know, go to the community and do branch Sabbath school. But I know it's difficult here, but I know, and I pray that as a family, we start doing that to be really be um, mindful of those who are not in the church or those who are suffering. Because I know that there are people, and there are a lot of people, and we know that a lot of people now is um, suffering from mental health, right? And I hope and pray that God will touch us. And I'm looking, and it says here, I'm going to read something here. It says, love, outgoing concern, and organized, selfless care of the sick and dying created an admiration of these believers in the Christ they represented. So I was looking here when the epidemic happened in AD 160 and AD 260, right? And I know that we suffered from this happened in pandemic that happened to us, right? And the PAA student went to Winnipeg in March doing the mission trip, and we knew how hard to work and to be there. But I'm so amazed how the students acted, and even how they are now believe that this is a big thing that they have to do, and they want to do it every time, or if they can do it frequently. That's what they told us as a sponsors, right? So it's amazing how when we go out and serve others, we know that God, we can show the love of God, right? It's easy for us to say, oh, this is the verses, this is things and that, but you know, physically and even in my own family, it's easy to say to our children, oh, this is what